Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. We don't carry anything in your price range. Those words hung in the air like poison, slicing through the ambient piano music of the luxury jewelry store. The young man's fingers trembled slightly on the glass counter, his reflection distorted among the glittering diamonds he could never afford. Around him, the whispers began. The showroom of Bellamy's fine jewelry exuded exclusivity from every polished surface. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across diamond-studded displays, their light catching on the smirk of the saleswoman in her immaculate black suit. Two well-dressed shoppers nearby exchanged knowing glances, their quiet laughter cutting deeper than any direct insult. The young man's second-hand jacket and carefully combed hair suddenly felt like a costume, a pathetic attempt to belong in a world that wasn't his. He'd saved for 14 months. Overtime shifts, skipped lunches, a smaller apartment. All for this moment, for Emily, for the ring she deserved. Now he stood frozen, dignity bleeding out under the merciless lights. He didn't notice the man in the corner lowering his magazine, didn't see the intensity in those famous eyes as they narrowed, observing everything. The Hollywood star set down his coffee, straightened his casual designer jacket, and began moving toward the counter with deliberate steps. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Michael Carter had practiced what he would say for weeks. 25 years old, with calloused hands from his construction job and ink-stained fingers from his night work entering data, he'd imagined this day differently. The tiny velvet box in his pocket contained no diamond. He couldn't afford one. Just a simple gold band with a small emerald that matched Emily's eyes. They'd been together since high school, her believing in him through community college, through the layoffs, through his mother's illness. She never complained about the cheap dates or postponed vacations. "We have time," she always said, her smile more precious than anything in these display cases. The saleswoman, Veronica, according to her name tag, tapped manicured nails against the glass counter. Her eyes had performed a swift calculation the moment Michael walked in, taking in his scuffed shoes, the worn edges of his wallet. She'd been helping a couple select anniversary gifts when Michael approached, her attention immediately evaporating from him like water on hot pavement. Perhaps a costume jewelry shop downtown would be more appropriate, she suggested, not bothering to lower her voice. The couple, the man in a tailored suit, the woman draped in designer labels, covered their smiles with practiced discretion. The woman whispered something to her husband, who nodded with the easy confidence of someone who had never worried about money. "I saved up," Michael said, his voice quiet but steady. "I have $2,000. He pulled out the carefully counted bills, wrapped in a bank envelope. For 14 months, he'd visualized this moment differently. Respectful assistance, maybe even congratulations on his upcoming proposal. The reality crashed against him like a cold wave. $2,000. A fortune to him. A joke in this store where the least expensive items started at 5 times that amount. Veronica's eyebrows arched elegantly. $2,000. She repeated the sum as if examining a curious specimen. Her gaze flicked to her wealthy clients, a silent communication passing between them, the shared acknowledgement of an intruder in their world. "Our starter engagement pieces begin at $10,000 minimum, for something meaningful." The last word twisted like a knife. The wealthy woman touched a hand to her own massive diamond, at least 3 carats, seeming to ensure it was still there after the contamination of such modest aspirations in its presence. Behind his magazine in the waiting area, Leonardo DiCaprio observed the scene unfolding with increasing intensity. Dressed down in jeans and a simple dark jacket, he'd come to Bellamy's to look at watches, an ordinary errand made complicated by his extraordinary fame. The baseball cap and casual attire usually bought him a few minutes of anonymity, enough to browse in peace before the inevitable recognition. But now, his attention had completely shifted from the timepieces to the humiliation playing out by the engagement ring counter. His jaw tightened, a muscle working in his cheek as he recognized something in the young man's eyes. Dignity under fire. Determination despite shame. Michael's hand moved to his pocket, fingers brushing against the small box containing his hopes. He wondered if Emily would be ashamed of him in this moment, standing here being humiliated, being less than what a man should be for the woman he loves. But then he remembered her words last Christmas, when he apologized for the modest gift he'd given her, a notebook with a handwritten story about how they met. "The price tag has nothing to do with the value," she'd said, kissing him. "The value is in what it means." The wealthy couple had now fully turned to watch, no longer pretending not to listen. The husband whispered something that made his wife laugh softly, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she raised a hand to cover her mouth. Other customers were beginning to notice the uncomfortable scene, a few glancing over with the detached interest of audiences watching street theater. Michael felt himself becoming a spectacle, the poor boy being put in his place, a cautionary tale about knowing where you belong. Leo set down his magazine and stood, recognition rippling through the store as he did. A security guard noticed first, then a customer gasped quietly. The wealthy couple turned, distracted from Michael's humiliation by the greater gravitational pull of genuine celebrity. But Leonardo didn't acknowledge them. His focus remained locked on the scene by the counter, his movements deliberate as he approached. He'd played many roles in his career: billionaires and paupers, heroes and villains, lovers and fighters. But the role he stepped into now wasn't fictional. It was the role of someone who remembered what it meant to dream bigger than your circumstances, to love beyond your means. Someone who hadn't forgotten the value of things that couldn't be priced. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. A hush fell over the showroom as Leonardo approached the counter. The security guard straightened his posture, the wealthy couple angled themselves for potential interaction, and Veronica's professional smile resurfaced with dazzling speed. She immediately abandoned Michael, her body language shifting like a weather vane in the changing winds. "Mr. DiCaprio, what an unexpected honor. How may I assist you today?" Her voice had transformed into a silken purr, every syllable calibrated for maximum appeal. The contempt that had laced her words moments ago had vanished without a trace. Michael stepped back, resigned to his invisibility, preparing to leave with the shreds of his dignity. He didn't immediately recognize the actor, his mind too consumed with shame and disappointment to process the celebrity in their midst. He just saw another wealthy patron, another person who belonged in this crystal palace where he did not. He tucked the envelope of bills back into his jacket pocket, the movement careful despite his trembling fingers. $2,000. 14 months. Dreams reduced to awkward apologies. "Actually," Leonardo said, his voice carrying that distinctive quality millions knew from theaters worldwide, "I couldn't help overhearing." He turned toward Michael with a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You're looking for an engagement ring." The question was directed solely at Michael, bypassing Veronica completely, as if she'd suddenly become irrelevant to the transaction. The wealthy couple froze mid-movement, caught between approaching their favorite actor and the uncomfortable realization that he had apparently sided with the store's least desirable customer. Veronica's smile faltered slightly, uncertainty creeping into her expression. The store manager, sensing a potential PR situation unfolding, emerged from his office with the radar-like instinct of retail leadership during a disruption. Customers throughout the store had stopped browsing, attention magnetically drawn to the famous profile now focused entirely on the young man in the worn jacket. "Yes, sir," Michael replied, the formality automatic, still not fully processing who he was speaking to. "For my girlfriend, Emily." His voice grew steadier with her name, as if drawing strength from the thought of her. He hesitated, then added with quiet dignity, "We've been together 6 years. She's studying to be a teacher." Leonardo nodded thoughtfully, maintaining eye contact with Michael rather than acknowledging the growing audience around them. 6 years is substantial. That's real commitment. There was something in his tone, genuine respect rather than condescension. He turned slightly toward Veronica, who was now practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Would you mind showing us what you have in the $2,000 range?" Veronica's smile became strained, plastic. "As I was explaining to this gentleman, Mr. DiCaprio, we don't actually carry anything in that particular bracket. Our clientele typically expects a certain standard that—" "I understand," Leonardo interrupted, his voice still pleasant but with steel underneath. "Then perhaps we could see your most modest pieces. Surely Bellamy serves diverse customers with various needs." The statement hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in politeness. The store manager materialized beside Veronica, smoothly inserting himself into the conversation. "Mr. DiCaprio, I'm Thomas Bellamy. It's an honor to have you in our establishment." He extended his hand, which Leonardo shook briefly. "Perhaps I could show you and your friend our private collection. We might find something suitable." The wealthy couple had drifted closer, the wife angling her phone discreetly for a potential photo opportunity. Other customers whispered among themselves, some recording the interaction on their phones. The scenario had transformed into something none of them had anticipated, a Hollywood icon advocating for the underdog, challenging the rigid class barriers that places like Bellamy's were designed to enforce. "Actually," Leonardo said, "I think we should look at what you have right here." He gestured to the main display cases, the public area where everyone could witness what followed. "I'm interested in how Bellamy's treats all its customers." His emphasis on all carried unmistakable meaning. The atmosphere in the store shifted perceptibly, tension crystallizing like frost on glass. This wasn't just about an engagement ring anymore. It had become a moment of public accountability. Michael finally recognized who was standing beside him, the realization hitting like a physical jolt. Leonardo DiCaprio, the actor from Titanic, The Revenant, countless other films, was deliberately inserting himself into this humiliating moment, transforming it into something else entirely. Michael straightened his posture almost unconsciously, a flicker of hope replacing the shame that had been crushing him moments earlier. "Perhaps," Thomas Bellamy said, his professional demeanor straining against obvious discomfort, "we could check our estate collection. Occasionally, we acquire pieces that might be more accessible." He shot Veronica a pointed look, and she immediately moved toward a different display case, keys jingling nervously in her hand. The wealthy couple exchanged glances, their entertainment now tinged with uncertainty. The wife lowered her phone, suddenly self-conscious about documenting a situation that had shifted into something potentially unflattering to their social stratum. Other customers watched with varying expressions, some uncomfortable, some quietly supportive, all completely invested in the unfolding drama. Leonardo placed a casual hand on Michael's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity visible to everyone. "What does Emily like?" he asked, his question deliberately loud enough to be heard by those nearby. Classic styles? Modern? Colored stones? The conversation was ordinary, but the context made it revolutionary. A public insistence that Michael belonged here, that his love and his $2,000 were worthy of respect. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. Veronica returned with a small tray of rings, setting it on the counter with precise movements that betrayed her nervousness. "These are from our estate collection," she explained, her voice professionally detached. "They range from $2,500 to $4,000. Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward Thomas Bellamy, communicating silently that she'd already compromised the store's standards by presenting merchandise in this price range. Michael's face fell slightly as he looked at the price tags. "I'm sorry, these are still—" He couldn't finish the sentence, the humiliation threatening to return in full force. He began to step back, but Leonardo's hand remained steadily on his shoulder. "I believe Michael mentioned he has $2,000, Leonardo said, his tone conversational but with an edge that cut through the polished atmosphere. "That's his budget, not $2,500, not $4,000. $2,000. He looked directly at Thomas Bellamy. Surely a prestigious establishment like Bellamy's can work within a customer's stated budget, especially for something as significant as an engagement ring. The challenge hung in the air. Thomas Bellamy's professional smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Around them, customers had stopped pretending to shop, openly watching the confrontation. One young woman was live-streaming the interaction on her phone, her expression alight with vindicated justice. The wealthy couple had retreated to a corner, their earlier amusement now replaced by discomfort as they found themselves on the wrong side of a rapidly shifting narrative. "Mr. DiCaprio," Thomas began carefully, "we pride ourselves on quality and—" "So does Michael," Leonardo interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "He saved for 14 months. He works 2 jobs. He's not looking for a handout, he's a customer with cash in hand." He gestured to the store around them. "The question is whether Bellamy's values all its customers or only those above a certain price point." A heavy silence fell over the showroom. Thomas Bellamy's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculations happening behind his eyes, weighing decades of exclusive business practices against the potential viral disaster unfolding in his store. Several customers had phones raised now, the modern-day witnesses to either corporate redemption or spectacular failure. "There might be something," came a quiet voice from behind the counter. It belonged to a younger sales associate who had been watching nervously from the sidelines. "In the back, from the vintage collection." Her eyes darted to Thomas, seeking permission. "The gold band with the small emerald? It came in last week, priced at $19.50. Thomas hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes, Miranda. Please retrieve that for us." His voice had regained its professional smoothness. "Thank you for the reminder." Miranda disappeared into the back room while an uncomfortable silence stretched across the showroom. Michael stood straighter now, Leonardo's presence beside him functioning as both shield and spotlight. The actor's expression remained pleasant, but with the intensity that had made him famous, the look of someone who would not be backing down. Veronica busied herself rearranging items in the display case, her earlier contempt replaced by careful neutrality. "You know," Leonardo said conversationally, breaking the silence, "I remember saving up for my first major purchase. Before any success, before anyone knew my name." He wasn't speaking just to Michael now, but to the entire room. The value wasn't in the price tag. It was in what the sacrifice represented. His gaze swept around the store, connecting briefly with each watching customer. Sometimes we forget that luxury isn't about exclusion. True luxury is appreciating value beyond cost. Miranda returned with a small black box, her movements careful as she placed it on a velvet display pad. This piece came from an estate in Providence. It's from the 1960s, she explained, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant gold band with a small emerald nestled in a vintage setting. It's priced at $1,950. Michael's expression transformed as he looked at the ring. The emerald wasn't large, but it caught the light with a depth that spoke of quality despite its modest size. More importantly, it was almost exactly what he had imagined for Emily. Vintage, understated, with a green stone that would complement her eyes. "It's perfect," he whispered, then looked up with renewed confidence. "It's exactly what I was hoping to find." Leonardo stepped back slightly, allowing Michael this moment in full. The young man reached into his pocket and withdrew the envelope of carefully counted bills. With steady hands, he counted out $1,950 onto the counter, the physical manifestation of countless extra shifts, skipped lunches, and deferred dreams. Each bill represented a piece of his devotion, more meaningful than any carats or clarity grade. Thomas Bellamy had recovered his professional equilibrium, now leaning fully into the narrative of exceptional customer service. "We'll provide the full Bellamy's experience, of course," he announced, loud enough for all to hear. "Complimentary sizing, our signature packaging, and the extended protection plan, all included at no additional charge." He nodded to Miranda, who began preparing the paperwork with a small smile of satisfaction. The entire atmosphere of the store had shifted. Customers who had been watching now approached Michael, offering quiet congratulations. A middle-aged woman touched his arm gently. "She's going to love it," she said with genuine warmth. The wealthy couple had quietly slipped out, their earlier mockery rendered inappropriate by the turn of events. Veronica remained professionally detached, but the contempt had been replaced by something resembling respect, or at least the appearance of it. Leonardo stood nearby, watching with quiet satisfaction as Michael completed his purchase. When the young man turned to thank him, the actor shook his head slightly. "No thanks needed," he said, his voice low enough that only Michael could hear. "You did all the work. 14 months of it." He gestured to the ring box now safely in Michael's hand. "That right there? That's real value, not the price, the meaning behind it. It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." As Michael left Bellamy's fine jewelry, the signature blue bag in his hand felt weightless compared to the burden that had been lifted from his shoulders. The small ring box inside contained more than just gold and emerald. It held his vindicated dignity, his reaffirmed worth. Outside on the sidewalk, he turned to Leonardo, words finally coming together after the surreal experience. "I don't know how to thank you. What you did in there." Leonardo smiled, adjusting his cap as they stepped away from the store's gleaming facade. "What I did was remind them of something they'd forgotten." He glanced back at the jewelry store where customers inside were still buzzing about what they'd witnessed. Places like that exist to make people feel special, not excluded. News of the encounter had already begun spreading. Several customers leaving the store had posted videos online, their captions celebrating the moment. DiCaprio just schooled this jewelry store on how to treat people, and just watched Leo stand up for love over money. Phones chimed with notifications as the clips gained traction, spreading from personal accounts to larger platforms with stunning speed. The wealthy couple, driving away in their luxury car, scrolled through their social media feeds in uncomfortable silence, seeing themselves cast as unnamed villains in a story rapidly going viral. Inside Bellamy's, Thomas had gathered his staff for an impromptu meeting. "This is a teaching moment," he said, his tone making it clear that significant changes would follow. Miranda received quiet praise for her quick thinking, while Veronica's expression remained carefully neutral, her status visibly diminished. The manager's phone had already begun ringing with calls from local news outlets seeking comment on the interaction with the famous actor. By evening, the story had expanded beyond local interest. Entertainment news sites picked up the videos, embedding them alongside headlines that captured the public's imagination. Leonardo DiCaprio champions love over luxury in jewelry store showdown. Social media exploded with commentary, the incident striking a chord with countless people who had experienced similar moments of class-based humiliation. The narrative resonated particularly strongly with young couples planning engagements, many sharing their own stories of feeling judged for modest budgets. Leonardo's publicist called him about the trending videos, but the actor seemed unconcerned. "It wasn't about publicity," he told her. "Some things just need to be said." When asked for official comment, he replied simply, "Love isn't measured in carats." For Michael, the aftermath was equally transformative. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from friends who had seen the videos. His mother called in tears, proud of how he had carried himself with dignity. His co-workers at both jobs treated him with new respect, impressed by his quiet determination and the unexpected celebrity endorsement of his character. 3 days later, Thomas Bellamy announced a new initiative at his jewelry store, the Milestone Collection, featuring quality pieces at more accessible price points. In interviews, he spoke eloquently about honoring all love stories, regardless of budget. He never explicitly mentioned the incident that had prompted this change, but the timing left little doubt. Veronica was noticeably absent from the sales floor, reportedly transferred to inventory management where customer interaction would be minimal. A week after the incident, Michael took Emily to the small lake where they had first met at a high school party 6 years earlier. As the sunset painted the water with golden light, he knelt and presented the emerald ring. Through happy tears, she said yes before he even finished his carefully rehearsed speech. When he told her the story behind the ring, including Leonardo's unexpected intervention, she listened with wide eyes, then looked down at the modest emerald with newfound appreciation. "It's perfect," she whispered, watching how the green stone caught the fading light. "Not because of who helped you buy it, but because of what you went through to give it to me." She touched his face gently. 14 months of saving. That's the real value. The videos of the jewelry store confrontation continued to circulate, becoming part of a larger conversation about worth, dignity, and true luxury. Marketing professors used it as a case study in how not to alienate potential customers. Ethics instructors showed it to demonstrate how privilege becomes invisible to those who have it. And countless young men and women found courage in Michael's quiet dignity and Leonardo's unexpected allyship. Leonardo himself moved on to other projects, other roles, rarely mentioning the incident in interviews. But occasionally, when asked about his views on wealth and status, he would smile slightly and say, "True value isn't in what we can afford. It's in what we're willing to sacrifice for the things that really matter." For Michael and Emily, the story became part of their shared mythology, retold at dinner parties and family gatherings. The viral fame faded, as it always does, but the lesson remained crystallized in that small emerald ring, a permanent reminder that love measured in devotion will always outshine love measured in dollars. Years later, when their first child asked about Mommy's green ring, they would share the story again, passing down a lesson more valuable than any diamond, that worth comes not from price, but from meaning. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.